Hello, happy Monday. Sorry I did not give you any warning about going live, but don't worry, the recording will be on the Facebook page, and I'll probably also upload it to YouTube for anybody who doesn't see this or doesn't belong to Facebook. So sorry, time has been flying. I meant to jump on Friday to address a few things that have come up in emails, and and I just find this a much more efficient way to answer questions, and also just tell you about some resources. So I'll start with that. I think I've mentioned before, and I've shared a few posts from the Pennsylvania Home Educators Association page on Facebook, and that's a terrific resource. Mary Alice is always up to date on the latest legislation and waivers and information, especially as it pertains to homeschoolers or home educators in Pennsylvania. So I think I just saw on her page today that she's starting a private group, and I think she has a team of people who help her just kind of stay on top of things, because like I said, I think I mentioned before that her children are all grown, and so anyway, and it looks like in the group they're available, willing, able, and probably a lot of them are current homeschoolers, so they're in it too, but to answer any questions, large or small, they said. So I would encourage you to check that out on on the Pennsylvania Home Educators Association Facebook page, and I think there's a link to the private group at the top of that page. So definitely take advantage of that resource. Then the other thing she mentioned on the page was that I guess a couple of days ago the Pennsylvania Department of Health waived the immunization requirements for 2 months from the start of school. So if you're in a situation, even though she said that the waiver doesn't apply necessarily or specifically to home education programs, it would follow that home educated students have the same limitations and access or lack of access to health services. So she suggested just putting a note, like if your child couldn't get up to date on their immunizations, just put a note to that effect when you file your affidavit. And she also has a really good summary. I scrolled down on the page about what to file. So even though the Pennsylvania homeschool law, in the past, I have relied on language that says that stating that you have the home education program complies with the homeschool law, including health service requirements, and you could rely on the affidavit. A Pennsylvania Disease Prevention and Control Act, which does apply to the public school code, and it's not under the homeschool law, but it is referred to in the public school code. School districts are required to keep immunization records of all children in the district, including those in a homeschool program. So and I agree with this, her recommendation, if you don't claim an exemption, either a religious, moral, or health exemption, which if you do, you file that, her recommendation is just to attach the updated immunization record along with your affidavit. Okay, I got a good question, which I've never come across before. at least specifically, nobody's asked this of me, that somebody said that they have in the past when their child was in public school, and I think they must be homeschooling due to COVID, have maintained a religious exemption. So they filed that with the school. But she was wondering whether that applies if you just your child gets immunizations, but on an extended schedule. So that was a good question, and I actually don't know the answer to that. You could make an argument either way, and since she has been filing an exemption, I said it makes sense to do what you have been doing, and if it comes up, I suppose her health provider could. So she could, if somebody questioned it, she could, file the list of immunizations that the children have received with a note from the doctor claiming that, doing so on a more aggressive schedule would be compromising the child's health. So, but I was surprised that I've not come across that or thought about it myself. Anyway, so my point is to go check out the Pennsylvania Home Educators Association Facebook page as a terrific resource, and join the group if you need more help navigating all this stuff. So the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is something, this also came up from a parent in my district, and I guess she tried to submit an affidavit and proposed list of objectives in person. In our district, the respective elementary schools principals handle the elementary aged homeschool students. Not handle, but they keep the paperwork. So I don't know why, but they do. So rather than mail in the affidavit and proposed list of objectives, which I always suggest mail it, certified mail, return receipt requested, she actually took them there and they refused to take them. Whoever it was, the secretary, said, "No, I can't take this until you complete the rest of this packet." And it came with a letter. So with the packet was what they call a demographic form, information sheet, which is completely inappropriate and inaccurate. She should have just accepted the materials, she could have given her the packet. And my suggestion to this parent would be just ignore it, or just say that you're in compliance and you don't have anything further to do under the Pennsylvania homeschool law. So I got a copy of the letter, and it's so funny because when my daughter, who graduated in 2016, she finished up as a homeschooler, and then she graduated early, so in 2000. Oh, no, it was 2017. And then in the fall of 2017, I got this notice from the school saying that, the affidavit and the proposed list of objectives and then all this other stuff is due for her senior year. And I said, since she had met all the requirements, she graduated early, so we won't be filing that kind of thing. She got her diploma and she's done, which was fine, but I did address in the letter all the inappropriate requests from the school district. And as parents who intend to have their kids go back to school, these are battles that you might not want to fight. I mean, they probably have your child's demographic information anyway, and they'll have it on file if and when you decide to send your children back to school. But I just wanted to point out some of the things that at least are typical in my school district, and they're still doing it 3 years later, even though I pointed out to the person who handled the paperwork back then that so much of this letter was inaccurate. So one of the things, the first line says, I'm in the Carleton School District, has reviewed and approved the home education evaluation letter from the previous year. Well, it's not their job to approve it. And then a lot of times when you submit the affidavit for the beginning of the year, they'll say, your home education program is approved. There's no authority for the school district to approve the home education program. So that's just a little thing that annoys me. So in addition to them requesting the affidavit because they thought she wasn't finished yet, which I get, and it said you must include in his or her home education program the planned courses of instruction in the required subjects for the appropriate age/grade level, quote. The planned courses may be those in current use in the school district or approved in advance by the superintendent. There's nothing in that paragraph that's accurate. So the law requires, in addition to the affidavit, the language is an outline of proposed education objectives by subject area. That's it. And as I said last week, I always suggest super general, because you change your mind and nobody's looking at it, nobody's approving or disapproving of it. It's just sort of a guideline. And it could be as simple as the home education program intends to improve or expand in this subject matter, in this subject matter. That's it. It could be that general. But mine was a little more detailed. But there's, you don't have to say for the appropriate age or grade level. That's ridiculous. The planned courses may be those in current use in the school district or approved in advance by the superintendent. Not required. Although you do have access to the school curriculum, they probably would only give you the textbooks or curriculum for that grade. So for the, suggested grade. So you do have access to that if you put your request in writing. But there's no requirement that the superintendent approve materials that you intend to use, or even if you don't use materials. Then number 3 is certification of homeschool instructor, in parentheses, teacher certification. No, not required. A copy of the Pennsylvania teaching certificate is required if you're doing the private tutor option, but that doesn't apply to the home education program. So that's not required. A copy of your child's immunization records, if not already on file. So yeah, that's appropriate. And then number 5, demographics for student. And they give a demographic sheet with just information that's not required by the homeschool law. This other parent, in her letter, it said that she also needed to provide 2 proofs of residency. So that is required if your child is enrolling, or if your child is going to go to a charter school, even a cyber charter school. You have to fill out their enrollment forms for the current districts, basically so they can pay the bill. They don't want to pay the bill for if you don't live in the district, and that's their proof. But the affidavit has your home address on it, and that sworn statement is your proof that you're a resident of the district. And that's what's required under the Pennsylvania home education law. So, Let me just read this part and I'll see if there's anything I'm using here. At the conclusion of each school term, the homeschool educator will be responsible to send the district superintendent a certification that an appropriate education has occurred. This certification is due in the superintendent's office by July of each year. Well, they're almost right, but they're not really quite right because it's due by June 30th, and it's the homeschool educator is responsible to send the district a certification. You have to get an evaluator who's approved under one of the law defines who can be an evaluator. So the certification has to come from an evaluator, not the homeschool parent, homeschool educator. So anyway, I would suggest, if you feel like it, I'm the kind of person who has a hard time ignoring things like that. So what I did is I just emailed the person who sent the letter and said, hey, first of all, my daughter is no longer in high school. She graduated. And there we go. And then I just pointed out all the inaccuracies basically for her benefit, because one of the things I realize is that people who are assigned to this, just collecting the home education materials really don't know the law, are just relying on what's the forms that are in the file or the form letters that are in the file. This is shuffled around so often in a district that they just don't know. So I always take the time to point it out that this is not accurate. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. And you're really confusing parents, especially new homeschoolers in the district. So I have offered to work with them to come up with language that is appropriate. So the question is, am I going to bother this year? I do know a couple of people on the school board. So in passing, if I see them walking around, which I have, I might say, hey, it's embarrassing at this point. I mean, it just annoys me, and it's a waste of time. So I might suggest, hey, if you want some help understanding this, I can help somebody understand it, or they can, ignore me. I don't care. But what's so funny about this letter that I got in 2017, and then another parent got a similar thing in 2020, which was a little bit different, but still didn't eliminate all the inaccuracies, is much condensed. Since 2009, I went back in my files and found a letter similar. It's usually triggered by filing an affidavit. And it was so funny. It just had all these things that aren't required. It kind of mashed the private tutor option with the requirements of the home education plan. And at that time, portfolios used to be submitted to the superintendent, and it included all this stuff that was supposed to be in the portfolio but wasn't required under the law. It was just nutty. So this is a little bit of an improvement, but it's not accurate. And I realize, like I said, so most parents who really would prefer that their kids go to school when things get normal again, or if they ever get normal, when things are more suitable for their family, they don't want to fight these battles. I totally get that. And a lot of people wouldn't even bother to respond to this. They'd just ignore it and say it's not required. So it's not my job to educate you. So I respect that too. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Don't be surprised and don't be alarmed if you get a letter that acknowledges receipt of an affidavit and it's filled with extra requirements that don't apply. In fact, the guide that I wrote, it's on my website, it's called School District Shenanigans, has a bunch of form letters to answer like really typical requests that have no basis in the law. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Don't freak out. Just, you know. So somebody, so nice, I don't know if this would show up in the comments, has a form letter to whom it may concern regarding religious exemption. I, blank, being the legal guardian of the child, object to both the immunization requirements and also to the school keeping records of medical and dental visits as well as other medical tests as outlined by the Pennsylvania Department of Health of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on the basis of a strong moral or ethical conviction similar to a religious belief. Sincerely, blank. So this is a form letter that somebody must have submitted, and I'm guessing their child has been enrolled. So let me address two things. First, the homeschool law and that the Disease Prevention and Control Act only requires the school to keep records of immunizations. While there are certain health services requirements in certain grades, those records don't have to, the school doesn't have to keep those records. Now, you know, when my kids were in school, if they were in a year that a physical was required, for example, sometimes the school, you know, offers that. But if, and I always took them to their doctor, and I just sent in an acknowledgement that the service was performed. I didn't send them all the information from the summary of their physical. It's none of their business. But I want to note that the religious, I'm not an expert in this. How I read the law about claiming an exemption is that you're claiming a religious, ethical, or moral exception or objection to immunizations or health services that are required. That it is your right to object to it based on a religious or moral conviction. It is not my interpretation of the law that you object to it being the school's business. So that's not how I interpret it. But that said, so this paragraph says, and okay, you object to both the immunization requirements, so that's clear, and also to the school keeping records. Since it's and, both and, you know, that's the same thing. I don't know that your objection to the school keeping records is protected under that, you know, language. So, but if it works for you, go for it and try it. I don't even think you need the second sentence. So you can just stop it at, I, being the legal guardian of the child, object to the immunization requirements and health services. I think that is supported and protected by the law. But that might have just changed. I don't know if that, oh no, it's in the process of changing maybe. So again, I'm not an expert in this, so I apologize for my ignorance. But okay, have a medical information. Yeah, that's right. She says actually you don't have to have medical information on file. That's right, you don't have to file your medical records. You can present a refusal to report medical into with this format. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you'll get tested on this. If it works for you, go for it. And yeah. So I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. If anybody has, I could stay on for a couple of minutes if anybody has some general or specific questions. I'm curious to see what the attitude is. Usually I don't care, but I'm really curious how school administrators are reacting to people's decision to keep their kids at home under the homeschool law. Excuse me. Can't get that right now. Because if it were me, and I've said this before, I would be fine with having to manage fewer kids under these circumstances. Things are changing daily. Who knows what's going to happen when kids are back in school? It's so many moving parts. I would be thrilled that parents are just kind of taking it on themselves until further notice. I think that's awesome and gives you a lot of freedom. So yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. I guess I got to answer a couple of calls, and I hope this helps. All right, thank you.